Hi, folks. This is Jeff Moore. I am a 30-year veteran of public education, having been an administrator and a teacher. And this is the second video that I'm offering on how I've been looking at artificial intelligence for educational leadership. In my previous video, I showed you how I was using vibe coding. That is, how I was using AI to do computer programming for me to add some oomph to my note taking in the note taking app Obsidian. And I was using AI to find semantically related notes to particular topics and to group them together. It was really fun stuff. I promised a second video in which I was going to get behind the scenes and show you how I'd put that all together. However, since then, uh, the the scenes have kind of expanded a bit, and the space behind the scenes has also gotten a lot more complicated. So I've gone in a new direction, um, learning a lot, and want to show you what I've done. So what we have on the screen right here is an app that is a chat bot for interacting with artificial intelligence. And I'll just dive into it and show you how it works. And then as we go, and then a little bit after the tour, show you how things are coming together. Important to note, again, like I did in my last video, I am not a computer programmer. I know a little bit about programming, enough to explain to a computer what I want to do. It's kind of knowing those programming languages that I really fall down on. And that's where vibe coding, AI coding comes in. I can tell an AI code app like Cursor to write a computer program for me based on based on what I want it to do. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm introducing myself to an AI server that I've set up on my home network through an app called Olama. I tried running it locally on my MacBook Air, but it was just, a little too much for my MacBook. So I have it running on, actually, it's a little handheld gaming computer, a Legion Go that runs Windows 11 that we have in our house. And so I put Olama and some AI models on there and am running it off of there. The other thing that I've done, and I'll talk more about this later, is I trained an AI model on some specific sort of coaching content. I'm interested in developing an AI powered leadership coach, public school leadership coach. So I fed a lot of literature into an AI model to train it. That's a step that happened before all of this. So at the top level, we have a model that's been fed content specifically around ideas pertaining to educational leadership. Now, as we look at the app, you can see there's also a little bit of guidance here for our model. So we're assuming that I, as the user, am a school leader, and we're telling the model to, adjust its structure and its tone based on the rules in the current phase of the conversation. I'll get into that a little bit. And, however, no matter what the rules say, always make sure that you're being warm, friendly, helpful, professional, all those things. Address me directly in a natural tone. And then we may talk about this little thing right here about this exception when providing summaries between phases. But, we'll see how far we get. Here is on my local network the address to my little handheld Legion Go computer downstairs that is running my AI servers. So I'm going to connect to that. And we are connected, but I get to choose some options here. So one of them is a RAG pack. I've built RAG capability into my system. RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation. And I don't know much more about those words, except to say that what this means is that I can have locally stored documents that my AI companion looks at for content and context to answer my questions. If you have ever created a GPT on ChatGPT and uploaded documents into it, or if you use Notebook LM and uploaded documents into it, you're doing something very similar. This, though, allows me in my ecosystem here in my little walled garden to put specific documents aside and say these are going to be important. Look at them as context. Now I can also set a phase pack. Now this is something that I went back and forth with ChatGPT on about whether or not this was a new idea or an old idea. Basically, what I've done is mapped out phases to a conversation. I have sort of these standard, a standard list of conversational phases, and they all have different rules associated with them, like, hey, we're establishing rapport, so here are some do's, some don'ts, and some exit conditions for this phase. Hey, we're trying to get a sense of what your question or your concern is. Here's some do's, some don'ts, some exit conditions. So all of that's laid out, and I've strung several of these together into something that I call a coaching pack. So 6 phases to a coaching conversation. I can say no phases at all and just have a back and forth conversation, no problem. But I wanted to experiment with this idea of coaching, or conversational phases, rather. Now, ChatGPT says this is not necessarily an original idea because, if you remember playing with Eliza or anything a long time ago, like Eliza, you could upload scripts into that old chatbot that we were playing with. And gosh, I was playing with it in the 80s, so I can't imagine, probably older than that. And you could upload scripts that led it through different conversational phases. This is a similar thing. I'll show you what might be original about how I'm using them toward the end of the video. So I've selected, I'm actually going to select a RAG pack that is connected to my district. Now it's important to note, I do still work in public education, and I do have some documents that are relevant to problems that I have if I want to bring them to the leadership coach from my own district. But what I'm presenting to you here, everything I'm presenting in here is fictional. Nothing's tied back to my district, and I'm not speaking for my district in any way. So take this RAG pack and we'll take this phase pack, and then we'll proceed into the chat interface. And here we go. I'm going to move myself out of the way just a little bit. So I'm going to select a model. Downstairs on my little gaming computer, I have several models installed. This chatbot app is actually going to use most of these for different features, but I'm going to choose this one right here as my main conversational model. Mistral is a well-known, I've come to understand, a well-known model out there that you can download and run on your own home computer. Like ChatGPT is a model, or Gemini is a model. Mistral, there are tons of them. I'm using version 2 of Mistral, and this little stem right here, Laura, indicates that I have trained it on specific kind of content. Again, educational leadership content, everything from ideas about experiential education from John Dewey to things like organizational theory and organizational improvement, all sorts of things. It's about, a few hundred pages of material that I've reduced down to specific samples and fed it into this AI model, and this is what came out on the other side. Now, I'm going to type my message here. I am a leader. This is a leadership coach. We're going to bring it a fictional problem, and we're going to see how it walks through. Now, there may be some transitions as I deal with the speed of my network and the oomph of my handheld computer downstairs, which is better than my MacBook, but still not as good as maybe a mainframe would be. So we might see some transitions. I'll try to make them Star Wars-y if that's appropriate. We may also see some rough edges here because I am not done with this. I am still fighting, and sometimes it is fighting with my vibe coding app to get this where I want it to be. I'm just documenting it now so that you can see and I can kind of articulate what's happening with this project right now. So I'm going to start by saying, hello, I'm having an issue in my middle school. Now, if you remember the last screen, it knows that I'm a school leader, or it's assuming that I'm a school leader. So it's sending this. It may take a moment. So this prompt is going downstairs to my computer to that conversational model of Mistral, and Mistral is going to take a look at that. Mistral. I like saying Mistral better. It's going to take a look at that and apply it to its own training and also apply it to any other instructions it has and start working with me. So it sounds challenging. Aren't issues always challenging? Thank you, chatbot, for recognizing. But it definitely, hey, can you tell me more? So we see here's the model name. Now here is the phase that it's in. And again, I mapped out those phases one step at a time. So right now it's operating under specific rules that go along with this diagnostic inquiry phase. Things like ask at least two clarifying questions, say something validating, so these are rules that it has right now. And it has a specific exit condition also, which is me kind of saying, all right, that's all I know. Let's move on. So I'm gonna feed it a fictional situation, but it's a situation that some of you working in schools certainly may recognize, and it's certainly a feasible situation in today's climate. So I'm going to grab it actually out of my clipboard, and we're going to say this. Now, here's the situation I'm presenting as a school leader. Hispanic male students are absent for the full day more often than peers in my middle school. So it's now responded with something validating. I hear this. Now, what have you done, if anything? And are there any data suggesting why this might be happening with Hispanic male students? I'm going to add in another just piece of information here. Again, it's in a clarifying stage. It's trying to just understand my situation based on the rules of the diagnostic inquiry phase here. Our student body is about 20% Hispanic. Again, this is all fictional. Teachers think that the spike in absences is related to rumors of ICE activity in our community, but we haven't been able to prove it. And then a little bit about kind of the data that we've been collecting. I'll send that. Let's see how it responds. Point out here just how much is going on. This window on the left shows everything that is being sent to the model. All of the rules for this particular phase, those rules from the very beginning, how to signal whether or not this phase is over. You can see it's answered here, and we're getting that rule. And all of this, do not, what are the exit conditions for this phase? How do we judge those? And then, here is our conversational history. And then, here is my responses, and only here do we get to this thing that I typed up in the box. So all of this is being sent to my computer to give boundaries. So we have different boundaries playing in this model now. We have the training that I gave it on all of the organizational and educational theory. And then we also have all of these rules that are being passed, not just by my app in a large scale sense, but being passed by my app because we're in a specific phase of the conversation. And those rules govern this particular phase. Now, again, remember, not a computer programming. This is all coming about from me telling the computer, telling the AI vibe coder programmer what I want to do here. I haven't done anything except to explain, but I have gone back and forth quite a bit to explain. So these attendance patterns call for further investigation. It's crucial to learn. So it's still asking clarifying questions based on this phase, but I'm going to signal to it that I'm done. I don't know anything else. So this is really all of the information that I have right now. Send. This should, if we're lucky, it has in my few tests so far, this should trigger the model to say, oh, let's go to the next phase. And it has. And you can see here now that we're transitioning from diagnostic inquiry to sense making. Now, sense making is going to have other rules associated with it as a phase. So I'm going to click continue, and we'll see it's generating a summary. So it's taking our conversation so far and smashing it together. And it's going to now use that. It's taking this moment to just sort of stop, summarize, discard stuff that isn't important, and now move forward. It's going to move into the sense-making phase. Now, the sense-making phase, and it may take a few seconds to get there, All right, summary's done, and we're now continuing into actually the sense-making phase. So that's not going too slow. The sense-making phase is all about um, adding additional information from my district documents that I've attached to this. Remember that RAG thing I talked about earlier? So I have some specific district documents with building goals and different procedures for innovation and problem solving that's going to be attached to this if they're relevant. And It's going to now sort of try to expand my situation and see if I agree with how it's framing it against some of the information that it has in its context. Now, what's going back and forth here is there's several different AI calls happening. So the first thing is it generated a summary. That went to one AI model to generate the summary. That summary is coming back. That summary is then going to, in this phase, we are looking at different documents that are attached to my model. So that summary is then going to all those different documents and comparing, the model's comparing my summary mathematically to what's in all of those documents to see if any of those documents are relevant. And there's a lot of back and forth that goes on there. Oh, we got a return. And then that's all then coming back into my conversational AI model to say, all right, how can I put this all together for Jeff? So given patterns, so again, we're in the sense-making phase now. Given patterns of unexplained absenteeism, easy to jump to conclusions. However, doing so risks misdiagnosing root causes and undermining trust. Now, this is both the training that I gave it beforehand and all the documents that are showing up in my local library. So without those two things, the AI model might not have given me these insights. So it's a bit more of an expert than your regular run-of-the-mill AI model would be. So it's going on, kind of continuing to reframe this, asking questions like, what is really at the root of this? And do you agree with this expanded description of the situation? And by the way, here are some documents that it has found in my local library that has informed. And I can click on anything like this, Developmental Framework for Teacher Collaboration. I can click on that and get a document that we have talking about the different qualities of teacher collaboration. And these are all relevant because it's relevant to the history. And now I have many documents in that library, but these are the ones it's identified as relevant. And so it's presenting them to me as resources, but it's also using them to fine-tune its responses. So I'm going to say, yes, this is spot on. You've got it spot on. And we're going to send that back to the model. Now this is going to put us, or it should put us, in another phase transition, because I've just told it, you have achieved the goals of this phase, which are to get me to agree with your expanded summary. So we'll see how it does. It's sending it. Go back down into the debug and see. A little bit of a bug here. That should be saying false, but something for me to work on. It shouldn't have recognized the end of the conversation yet. It should be waiting until now to do that. So let's see where we go. You've got it spot on. All right, so we have let's move to the next phase of our conversation. So it has determined that, yep, we are done with this phase. So it's going to do this again. It's going to generate the summary. It's going to send that into the next phase. And the next phase will be about surfacing options for approaching this problem. Now, one thing to say, again, this going back and forth on my home network is a lot slower than it would be in a real environment, I would hope anyway. And I also have to say that when you use AI to code things for you, you really aren't doing what an expert coder would do in terms of making sure that it's fully optimized, making it as elegant as possible. You're sort of just stringing things together, really, to the degree that a real programmer would look at what I've done, and while the results are doing what I want them to, my code may look like a big old tangled mess, like like in my daughter's or my wife's jewelry box, the chains getting all tangled together. But it comes out with some of the right stuff on the other side. Okay, so now we're into the option generation phase, and it has brought everything together that we've been talking about. And now, following the rules of this phase, it's starting to offer solutions. A little bit of formatting issues here. We should have line break here and here. But it's starting to generate solutions, again, based on its training, based on the documents. And here are some documents that it's brought in. This is a document that details, different roles at different levels of the organization in different kinds of problems, who takes care of what, who supports whom, a chain of command, but more sort of conceptual around innovation and problem solving than about, who do you talk to if you're a parent with a complaint. And then we have our strategic plan in our district, which outlines a certain kind of approach toward innovation. So I can keep going with this, but I want to get to show you a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes. And for that, we will open up our vibe coding app, which is right here. I don't know what 90% of this means. Let me just say that up front. But what I have on the screen right now, I do know what this means a little bit. This is actually the file that details all of the rules for each phase of the conversation. And so you saw us going through diagnostic inquiry 1. Let me do a little bit of word wrap here. Offer welcoming and sympathetic statements. This is the directive to the system in this phase. And so all of this was built into the prompt as rules for the system. That's why that little prompt was so long. To gather all that the user knows about the situation until the user indicates they have shared all relevant, do these things, don't do these things. Exit when the user says, you'll remember that I said, that's really all I'm done. And then when are we moving on text? We're going to move on to sense making. And so here are the rules for sense making, etc. Each one of these phases has its own standard definition that I can then edit for the particular application that I'm working on here. Over here is where I tell the vibe coder what to do. So you can see where I'm telling it here, hey, I've noticed that there are resource links on those messages that say, let's move to the next phase, click continue. And I don't want there to be resources on that. I just need to click continue. I don't need to read anything. And so it actually goes in, all right, let me find out where that is in the code. I'm going to remove that. Here's the changes to the code that I'm making. And here's what I did. Really is amazingly smart at this. With my video on the Obsidian plugin, and with this as well, I basically start with an empty folder and say, I want to build this, and it goes. So it's pretty amazing for this Gen Xer to experience. This Gen Xer who guided a little graphic turtle through a maze using Logo in 1983. Pretty amazing for me to be at this point telling AI to use AI to write me a program that uses AI to determine the best way to approach a leadership problem in education. I mean, it's a little freaky. Now, there are different things going on here. One thing I haven't talked much about, which we maybe talk about in a future video, is how did I initially train the model to begin with? What did that look like to train the model? Is it me sitting across from it and just sort of feeding it books? Like, what does it look like? It's a pretty interesting process, and it gets to sort of how AI works, how it learns, how it works, how it responds, how it determines what's important to say. It's really interesting stuff. Here, we're seeing the programming that brings it together into a user experience for conversation, which is what you saw a bit of. And what it's also starting to show us is, again, or reminding us rather, the layers of regulation around this. So we have a model. ChatGPT, Gemini, anything. You have a model. You ask it questions, it responds. You have other layers that tell it how to respond. One of these layers is the training that I've done with the model to say, all right, you're going to be a leadership coach, so you have to read certain things. Here they are. And then bringing it into this program, we have, all right, here are some documents that I want you to use, our RAG pack. Here are some documents that I want you to use. In certain phases, you can notice that RAG context is only allowed in certain phases, but not others. Like when I'm explaining my problem, I don't want it necessarily digging up all these additional resources. Stop trying to solve my problem. Just listen to me. That's what I want to do. Whereas as we get into sense making and talking about how it expands my problem and understanding of it, I do want it, to use some additional research and literature on that. So here are some documents to use that are important to my school district. And then we have all of these rules. So we have these three main layers of how we're controlling the output here. How did we train the model? What documents are we giving to it to reference at specific times to fine tune its responses? And what should this phase of the conversation look like? Now, the last piece I want to show you is a little bit about what that phase generation looks like. So another vibe coded approach here. I said I want a cool tool that allows me to, oops, wrong place. I want a tool that allows me to lay out these phases in different orders in a graphical way. So this is a little rough, but this is what the vibe coder was able to come up with. Let me move myself over here. So here, I mentioned earlier that there are specific conversational building blocks, rudiments, ChatGPT started calling them. Here they are. And what I can do is, based on the kind of conversation I want the model to have, I can put them out in a specific order. So what we did for coaching was we did diagnostic inquiry. Again, this is all vibe coded. This is like AI coded this for me based on my description of, I'd like you to be able to drag this over there. Diagnostic inquiry, then we went to, I think we went to sense making. Then we went to option generation. So all these are here, and this doesn't tell us much right now except that I've got these three phases. I then have to say, all right, this phase leads to that phase, then this phase leads to that phase. I love these visual mind mapping kinds of things, so this is how I needed to approach this. The other thing I can do for my particular model is, I can double click this, and now I have all the information. Does this phase have access to all those other documents? Does this phase on some responses get a button that just says expand on this? What is the directive for this phase? I can edit all of this right here. I can add do's, I can add don'ts, I can remove them, different exit conditions. And I should say at this point, the wording of these things becomes so critical. And much of my work over the past week has been about getting the wording of these things right, which is why I'm still self-conscious showing this to anybody and thinking at any point I'm going to ask it a question and it's going to spit something back that I don't expect because I've gotten some of these words wrong, or it's going to move me to the next phase or prevent moving me to the next phase because I haven't set it up with the right language. So every one of these sentences, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind all of these to get these words right. But when it comes all together, and so what this does, I can get a JSON file here, which is the technical kind of language about the formatting of this file. It's formatted in a way that not only can my chatbot app read all of these rules, but this app that we're looking at now knows where to put each phase and how the phases are connected to each other. So it's all here. So this is what I've done from where I started coding an Obsidian plugin to use a locally installed AI model through Olama to figure out how some of my notes come together. This is where I've ended up with a vibe-coded ingredients of a platform, vibe-coded ingredients of a platform that results in really focused, really purpose-driven AI applications that are governed by conversational phase rules and give access to additional context from documents that you might attach locally. What's nice, I mean, we can do similar things certainly on Notebook LM. We can do similar things by creating a GPT. What this does, though, is it allows you to inject purpose into each layer of regulation. So we're training the model specifically. We're not using a big off-the-shelf generalist model like ChatGPT. We're training a model to be a specialist in educational theory, improvement science, and all sorts of things. We are hard coding through these phases into the prompts that we send it rules for interaction. And we are really able to fine tune how the documents that we're putting in are relevant to the conversation that's happening rather than counting on ChatGPT or Notebook LM to do all of that work for us. So the result is it's not, you're not going to ask it for sourdough bread recipes. You probably could. You're not going to, though. You're going to ask it questions that it's more of an expert in. This isn't the friends that you want to go have coffee with. This is the focus tool that you want to use to answer questions. If we wanted a friend to go have coffee with, we could just bring over different conversational elements and see what we get. Maybe I'll try that next. If you have any questions, any suggestions, any thoughts, any ideas, don't hesitate to share them. I'm eager to hear from you as I continue to work on this. Take care.